The rotor blades of CH-53E Super Stallion chop the Afghan sky, beating down a rhythm that rattles helmets and vibrates through bone. Dust explodes outward as the bird settles onto the makeshift landing zone. Marines crouch low, weapons hugged to their chests, eyes squinting through goggles against a storm of grit. Among them is Ethan Mallory, 26 years old, small-town Montana boy. The Marines call him Hawk, though not out of respect. The nickname started as a joke. Too quiet, too watchful, too strange for a man in uniform. He steps off the helo without a word, boots sinking into fine Afghan dust. No swagger, no loud greetings, just a measured, deliberate pace of a man, carrying weight the others can't see. Slung across his shoulder, a long black hard case. Inside the forward operating base, life hums at a restless pace. Generators growl, radios crackle. The metallic clang of wrenches echoes from the motor pool. Marines shout orders, laugh too loud, curse too easily, the soundscape of a war zone's rear edge. Mallory passes through it like a ghost. Nobody greets him. Nobody asks his name. He's just another face in Desert Marpat, another rifle in the endless rotation. The only thing that sets him apart is his silence, and that black case, which he keeps close, like it holds his entire world. In the barracks, men gather around a scarred wooden table, dealing cards with hands scarred and calloused. Cigarettes burn low, the smoke curling toward the ceiling fan that only half works. The room falls half quiet as Mallory enters, but only for a heartbeat. Then the laughter picks up again. Staff Sergeant McCallan leans back on his cot, boots propped on a footlocker, loud, broad-shouldered, the kind of Marine who fills a room before he even speaks. His voice carries over card game. Look at this guy. You lost Montana? You walk in here like you're hunting deer, not fighting Taliban. The barracks chuckle. Mallory doesn't answer. He moves to his bunk, sets the case down gently, clicks open the latches. Inside lies his M40A5 sniper rifle, custom-tuned bolt action, with a precision Schmidt and Bender scope. The black metal glints beneath the dull fluorescent light. His fingers move across it with reverence, checking the chamber, running a cloth along the barrel. The other Marines glance over, smirking. Private First Class Ramirez mutters, just loud enough, "Guy looks like he's about to marry the thing." McCallan grins. "That's 'cause it's the only friend he's got." Laughter again. But Mallory doesn't rise to it. He just keeps working, slow, precise, like time belongs to him and him alone. Inside, though, his thoughts move. They don't understand. Stillness is strength. Patience wins battles before the trigger even breaks. The door swings open. A civilian contractor strides in tactical khakis, polo shirt, aviator shades, even though the sun's down. He reeks of aftershave and arrogance. Badge clipped to his belt. "Evening, gents," he says, dropping his kit on an empty bunk. "Heard we got some fresh blood." His eyes fall on Mallory. "That him?" McCallan smirks. "That's our quiet hunter. Thinks he's Daniel Boone." The contractor chuckles, shaking his head. "Snipers. Hell, you boys don't need 'em anymore. We've got UAVs for that now. Thermal, satellite, high-res optics. Why send a guy with a bolt gun when you can drop a JDAM from 10,000 feet? The room laughs again. Mallory wipes the bolt clean, reassembles the rifle with slow clicks. His eyes lift, just for a moment, calm, unmoved. But the silence makes the laughter falter for half a beat. McCallan breaks it with a scoff. "Tell you what, Montana. Tomorrow, 0600. Range opens up. Let's see what all that polishing's worth. Unless you'd rather stay quiet forever." The challenge hangs in the air. The other Marines perk up, eager for entertainment. Mallory simply closes the case. The latches click shut. He stands, eyes meeting McCallan's for the briefest of moments. There's no anger in them, no fear, just a steady gaze of a man who already knows the outcome. He walks past, heading for his bunk. The room watches him go. When the lights go out, whispers ripple through the dark. He gonna take that challenge? No way. Dude's too weird. I heard he grew up hunting elk. Big deal. Taliban ain't elk. But Private Ramirez doesn't speak. He remembers qualification day. He remembers Mallory's grouping. 5 shots so tight they look like one. He remembers thinking it wasn't natural. And as sleep settles over the barracks, Ramirez finds himself wondering if the quiet man with the rifle case might be something far more dangerous than any of them realize. The desert dawn is still hours away. Outside, the night wind howls through the wire. Inside, Mallory lies on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His father's voice echoes in his mind. Patience, Ethan. Let the others make noise. Stillness is your ally. When the moment comes, strike true. He closes his eyes. Tomorrow, 0600. They'll mock him again. They'll laugh. But laughter doesn't stop a bullet. The desert sky bleeds pale orange as the first light breaks over mountains. Wind whistles low through Hesco barriers, carrying dust that stings the eyes and coats the teeth. At the range, paper targets sway slightly, pinned at distances stretching from 100 meters out to nearly a kilometer. The Marines file in, boots crunching gravel. Some sip bitter coffee from tin mugs. Others chew stale protein bars, all eager to see the spectacle. It isn't every day someone challenges a new guy. Staff Sergeant McCallan steps forward, his M16A4 slung across his chest. His grin is broad, confident, almost theatrical. He thrives on being the center of attention. "All right, ladies," he calls out, voice booming across the morning air. "Today we're going to see if our quiet hunter here can actually back up that brooding act, or if he's just another deer-chasing farm boy." Laughter erupts from the gathered Marines. Even the contractor is here, arms folded, smug expression plastered on his face. Mallory kneels at the firing mat, silent. He opens the hard case. The metallic clicks of latches breaking echo like punctuation in the laughter. Inside rests the M40A5 sniper rifle bolt action, chambered in 7.62 NATO. Its matte black finish absorbs the morning light. He lays it out carefully. Bipod locked. Scope checked. He runs a gloved hand across the barrel, almost ceremonial. McCallan shakes his head. "Look at this guy. Like he's handling fine china." More laughter. But one Marine, Ramirez, doesn't laugh. He remembers the grouping from qualification. 5 shots, one ragged hole. He stands at the back, watching quietly, tension gnawing his gut. Mallory settles prone behind the rifle. He adjusts the stock, checks cheek weld, breath steady. He speaks for the first time since arriving. "Spotter." Ramirez blinks, surprised to be acknowledged. He steps forward, hesitates, then kneels beside Mallory with the spotting scope. McCallan chuckles. "Oh, this is cute. Kid got a sidekick." Mallory ignores him. He sights in. The crosshairs settle. Wind pushes gently from left to right. The mirage wavers in the morning heat. 200 meters. Ramirez whispers, eyes on the spotting glass. Mallory breathes once, twice. He squeezes. Bang. The shot cracks across the range. Dust puffs from the target center. Dead hit. The Marines mutter. McCallan waves it off. "Any boot can hit at 200. Let's see him push it." They shift to 400. Mallory cycles the bolt with smooth precision, chambering the next round. He doesn't rush. His breathing is measured, heart rate steady. Bang. Another center hit. 600. Same result. Now the murmurs grow louder. The laughter quiets. Even the contractor narrows his eyes. McCallan tries to keep control. All right, lucky grouping. Long shot now, 800. Mallory makes no sound. He adjusts his dope, dials the scope, compensates for drop and wind drift. Ramirez whispers the call. Mallory inhales. The world narrows to crosshairs and target. Bang. A pause. Then Ramirez whispers, stunned. Impact. Dead center. The Marines gasp. Some whistle low. McCallan's grin falters, jaw tight. He tries to laugh it off. Fine. One more. Let's push him past doctrine. 1,000 meters. Bet he can't even see it. The contractor smirks. Certain Mallory has reached his limit. Mallory says nothing. He dials the scope again, every click deliberate. Wind curls dust across the range. Heat shimmer bends the air. The 1,000-meter target, is little more than a white speck. His body stills. His breathing slows. He times a shot to his heartbeat, pressing gently between pulses. Bang! The shot rings out, echoing against the mountains. The Marines hold their breath. Seconds drag. Target down. Ramirez says, voice barely audible. Center hit. 1,000 meters. Silence falls. The kind of silence that feels heavy, charged, impossible to ignore. McCallan clenches his jaw, searching for words. Lucky that was luck. Anybody can. Mallory pulls the bolt, ejects the casing, and sets the rifle aside. He stands without a word, dusts off his hands, and walks past McCallan. His calm stare lingers for a fraction of a second, just enough to make the sergeant's confidence crack. The contractor mutters, shaking his head. That's not standard. One Marine whispers, that grouping was tighter than the manual even says is possible. Another adds, it's like he's not even trying. Ramirez stays kneeling, stunned. He's seen good shooters before. But this was surgical, almost inhuman. He looks at Mallory's retreating figure, and for the first time, he believes a nickname. Hawk, not a joke anymore. The Marines watch as Mallory disappears toward the barracks. Silent as always, but the silence feels different now. He isn't invisible anymore. McCallan slams his rifle against the ground. Fine, he can shoot paper. Let's see how he handles when rounds are flying back. The words are loud, but even he doesn't sound convinced. The contractor exhales, uneasy. Drones don't shoot like that. Hell, machines don't shoot like that. The crowd disperses slowly, murmuring. The legend is beginning. The barracks are quiet now. The mockery of the morning has faded, replaced with hushed talk of what the sniper had done. Some call it luck, some call it skill, but no one can deny the grouping. Ethan Hawk. Mallory lies awake on his bunk, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Outside, the Afghan night breeze dusts through cracks of canvas and plywood. A generator hums low, distant, almost like a heartbeat. He closes his eyes, and the desert disappears. He is back in Montana. The smell is different. Pine, sap, wet earth after rain. A river runs cold and restless in the valley, cutting through the endless green. He is 16, lean and wiry, boots soaked through from the dew. The rifle in his hands is older than him, a Winchester Model 70 passed down from his father. The stock bears scratches from hunts before he was born. His father's voice is low, steady. Patience, Ethan. The forest moves on its own time. You don't rush it. The boy kneels in tall grass, eyes fixed on a mule deer across the meadow. It grazes without worry, tail flicking. His heart races. Palms sweat against the worn wood of the stock. Breathe, his father says. The shot isn't in the trigger. It's in the stillness before. Ethan breathes. The world narrows. Bang. The deer drops instantly. One clean shot through the heart. Back in FOB, Ethan shifts on his cot. The desert heat presses against the tent walls, but in his memory the Montana air is crisp, almost sharp. He remembers the silence after each shot in those woods, the way the forest seemed to pause, acknowledging what had happened. That silence is the same silence he heard at the range this morning, after the 1,000-meter hit. The weight of it hasn't changed. Years later, winter hunts came harder. Snow deep, wind cutting. His father's health failing. Ethan hunted alone. One night, under a frozen moon, he tracked a wounded elk through the timberline. The animal moved slow, bleeding, suffering. Hours passed. Snow soaked his clothes, numbed his hands. But he followed. When he finally found it, the elk stood broadside, breath steaming in the night air. Ethan raised a rifle, fingers stiff with cold. He hesitated. Something inside him shifted that night. Hunting wasn't just about the kill. It was about the discipline to wait, the respect to finish what was started, the responsibility of pulling the trigger only when it mattered. That night, he learned what it meant to carry weight without speaking of it. The memory bleeds back into the present. A Marine stirs across the room, mutters in his sleep. Outside, a convoy rumbles past. Hawk keeps his eyes shut, chasing the forest again. His mother's voice drifts through time now, softer than his father's, but firmer in a different way. Don't ever mistake silence for weakness. Ethan. The loudest man in the room usually has the least to say. He thinks of McCallan. The sergeant's voice had been loud at the range, but in the end, silence spoke louder. There was a night, just before he left for boot camp, when Ethan stood at the edge of the river with his rifle slung across his shoulder. He remembered staring at the dark water, wondering if the quiet he carried would ever survive the chaos of war. The river gave no answer, only its endless movement. Back in the desert, Hawk turns onto his side. Ramirez, 2 bunks down, watches him in the dim red glow of a flashlight. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. What he saw at the range is enough. But Ramirez wonders, quietly, who is this man? Where does that kind of calm come from? Another memory comes uninvited. The last hunt with his father. The old man was weak, coughing hard, leaning against a tree while Ethan sighted on a coyote at 400 yards. His father had smiled despite the pain. That's your shot now. You don't need me anymore. Ethan had made the shot clean. When he looked back, his father's eyes were shining, not pride in the kill, but in the steadiness of his boy. 2 months later, the old man was gone. That was the day Ethan Mallory learned silence could ache. He opens his eyes now, staring again at the ceiling of the barracks. Dust drifts lazily in the lantern glow. Outside, artillery thuds miles away, faint but constant. He breathes slow. The calm returns. Montana may be far, but it lives inside every pull of the trigger, every heartbeat before the shot. The Marines may not know it yet. McCallan may never understand. But Hawk carries forests and rivers with him into the desert. The night deepens. Ramirez finally closes his eyes. The hum of the generator slows, or maybe Hawk's mind just drowns it out. And then, an explosion in the distance. Not training, not artillery. A dull, sickening thud, followed by radio chatter cutting sharp through the silence. The FOB stirs. Boots hit the ground. Orders bark across the compound. Hawk sits up instantly. His hand rests on the rifle case before the command even reaches the barracks. Smoke rolls across the shattered convoy. The smell of burning fuel mixes with scorched metal, coating the back of every throat. Marines scramble for cover, coughing, spitting black. The radio hisses with overlapping calls. Nobody has a clear picture. Nobody except one man. The quiet hunter. The Marine they all mocked as silent, detached, almost invisible. He kneels in the dirt, calm in the chaos, his heart beating steady as a metronome. His hands don't shake. His eyes don't blink. He waits. Contact left. Contact left, a corporal yells, spraying rounds into the ridgeline. Bullets crack overhead, stone chips splintering into faces. The enemy is dug in, elevated, perfect ambush position. It's a slaughter waiting to happen. Suppressive fire. Move, 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 the lieutenant barks, voice breaking through the roar. But there's no movement forward. Marines are pinned. Morale teeters. In the chaos, someone shouts over comms. Where the hell is Sergeant Hale? The question cuts through the noise. All eyes flick to the man crouched behind a broken axle. Hale, the quiet hunter. The same man whose silence they once laughed at, whose withdrawn stare they mistook for weakness. He doesn't answer. He just unzips his battered rifle case. Inside gleams the weapon that changes everything. An M40A5 Marine sniper rifle. Bolt action, 7.62 NATO. The stock worn smooth by years of grip, the scope glass spotless. Hale's hands move with ritual precision, loading, chambering, steadying. Every click echoes like a promise. The others freeze, realization dawning. This isn't just another rifle. This is the scope that shifts battlefields. This is the tool of a Marine scout sniper. Corporal Ramirez whispers, "No damn way." His earlier mockery burns to ash in his throat. Hale finally speaks, voice low, controlled. "Cover my sector. I'll clear yours." He crawls forward, belly to dirt, smoke curling around his face. Each inch drags across gravel and shattered glass, but his focus never wavers. Through the scope, the battlefield transforms. Chaos turns to clarity. He counts targets. He measures wind. He calculates distance with instinct, not math. First target. RPG gunner behind a boulder. lining up another shot at the convoy wreckage. Hale exhales, presses a trigger. Crack! The man drops. The RPG clatters uselessly to the dirt. A stunned silence follows. Then cheers erupt. Hunter's got one. Keep him covered. But the enemy adapts. Muzzle flashes spark across the ridge. A sniper duel begins. Hale knows the signs. Scattered rounds designed to flush him out. One hidden rifle waiting for his mistake. He slows his breathing, becomes stone. A flicker. A glint of glass where none should be. He shifts 1 degree left. Center reticle on the shimmer. The rival sniper thinks he's invisible. He isn't. Hale's finger tightens. Crack! The glint vanishes. A body tumbles down rock. The Marines gasp. No more mocking. Only awe. Gunfire intensifies. A machine gun opens up, hammering suppressive fire, so heavy the dirt erupts like geysers. Marines duck, helmets ringing. The lieutenant screams into radio static. We're getting chewed up. Hunter, can you hit that nest? Hale doesn't answer immediately. He waits, patient, eyes through scope. The nest is shielded, gunners swapping belts with mechanical speed. A frontal assault would be suicide. But there, a brief gap, a shadow moving to reload. Hale seizes the moment. Crack! The gunner slumps. The heavy gun falls silent. Marines surge forward, emboldened. Advance! Push up the line. As they move, the earth shakes again. A second ID detonates, this one hidden deeper. The blast sends men sprawling. Screams pierce the smoke. Hale's scope rattles, his ears ring, but he holds steady. He tastes blood in his mouth. His ribs ache, but he stays prone, searching for the trigger man. Through haze, he spots him, a shadow darting between rocks, clutching a detonator. Hale steadies, but the man is fast, weaving. Every second he hesitates means another blast. Hunter, do you see him? Ramirez cries. I see him, Hale whispers. Crack. The detonator falls harmless. Marines exhale relief. For now. Still, the battle isn't over. Hale scans the ridge and freezes. There, a flag, black cloth marked with foreign script, rising above the enemy trench. A signal. Reinforcements are coming. The lieutenant swears under his breath. We got minutes, maybe less. He looks to Hale. Can you buy us time? Hale nods once. Not boastful, not dramatic, just certain. He shifts his rifle, adjusts his scope. His world narrows to crosshairs and heartbeat. Every shot now matters. Every trigger pull is one more life saved. For the first time, the Marines see what Hale truly is. Not just quiet, not just strange. He is a man the Corps forged to see farther, strike cleaner, hold steadier than anyone else. His silence was never weakness. It was discipline. It was the stillness before the shot. And in this broken convoy, in this valley of fire, the quiet hunter finally reveals himself. The Marines regroup, pushing forward under Hale's cover. Confidence rises. But as the dust settles, Hale's scope catches something that chills him. A figure, distant, cloaked, carrying not just a rifle, but the long barrel of an anti-material weapon, .50 caliber, capable of turning armored trucks into shredded tin. The voice crackles over enemy comms. Intercepted in static, Al-Hadid has arrived. Hale exhales, steady but tense. He knows that name. A sniper feared across theaters, called the Phantom of the Dunes. The hunter has met his match. Dust still hangs in the air from the convoy blast hours earlier. The desert feels restless, unsettled. Every man in the platoon knows this isn't over. The enemy didn't strike once to walk away. They're setting the stage for something bigger. Inside the makeshift command tent, the air tastes of stale coffee and radio static. Maps litter the table. Red markers slashed across known supply routes. The captain's jaw is set like stone as he listens to the garbled intel feed. Command says ambushes are hitting supply convoys east of Highway 7. He announces, his voice clipped decisive. Routes are compromised. Logistics is bleeding. Command needs overwatch on every mile of dirt our trucks move. The men exchange quick glances. Everyone understands the weight of those words. Overwatch means eyes on the road, High ground covered. One man watching while dozens live or die by what he sees. The sergeant scoffs under his breath. Great. Guess they'll send us a real shooter this time. His words carry sharp enough to cut through the air, meant for a hawk. The civilian contractor chuckles, shaking his head like the idea amuses him. But Hawk doesn't flinch. He just sits at the edge of the table, silent, steady, the same way he's been since the day they mocked him for being too quiet, too unremarkable. His hands rest calmly, fingertips brushing the hard case beside his chair. The case no one has seen open yet. The captain's eyes sweep the room. We got one shot at making these routes safe again, and we've got one man qualified to do it. The sergeant straightens, half smirk curling his lip. You mean we're requesting a sniper from battalion? The captain shakes his head. Slowly, deliberately, his finger points across the room. No request. We already have one. Hawk. The silence is immediate. The contractor laughs out loud. A sharp bark. Him? You're joking. I've seen him struggle, just zeroing an M4. You can't put supply lines in the hands of... Enough! The captain cuts him off. You don't have to like it. You just have to follow orders. Hawk takes the scope. For the first time, Hawk speaks. His voice is calm, measured. Copy that, sir. He rises, every movement precise. His hands lock onto the hard case, latches snapping open with metallic finality. The lid folds back. The room goes quiet. Inside, resting like a predator at sleep, is the Marine Corps' long-range sentinel, the M40A5 sniper rifle. Its matte black finish gleams faintly under the tense low light. The scope's glass reflects a single, cold glint. The rifle looks alive, coiled with purpose. The sergeant's smirk fades. The contractor's chuckle dies in his throat. They finally see the truth. Hawk never needed to argue. The rifle speaks for him. Later that night, on the edge of camp, Hawk lies prone in the sand. Scope presses his eye. The desert stretches endless before him. Stars scatter like silent witnesses above. His breath is steady, heart rate controlled, the way the Corps drilled into him years ago. In his scope, the road looks different than it does to the naked eye. Every shadow is a potential threat. Every dune is a possible firing point. His world narrows to reticles and distance markers, wind speed and trajectory. The radio crackles in his ear. Overwatch, this is command. Expect movement on Route 7. Supply convoys rolling in 5. Stay sharp. Hawk doesn't answer right away. He waits for a steady exhale, then presses a transmit. Overwatch copies. Eyes on. Back at camp, the sergeant and contractor watch from a distance. Their mockery has drained into uneasy silence. For the first time, they realize the quiet man isn't invisible. He's essential, a flicker in the distance. Headlights. The convoy crawls along the road, every truck a target. Hawk tracks him through his scope, glass catching each movement, each shift of shadow. Then he sees it, just a shimmer at first, a glint off steel, buried in the rocks overlooking the pass. His finger tightens around the trigger. Radio clicks twice. This is Overwatch. Hawk whispers, voice low but firm. Possible ambush. Ridgeline, 200 meters east. 3 silhouettes, 1 RPG-2 confirmed. The captain's reply is instant. Copy, Overwatch. Engage at your discretion. The world narrows. Wind. Distance. Breath. Exhale. Squeeze. The rifle cracks like thunder, rolling across the desert night. One silhouette collapses, dropping into the rocks. The others scatter, scrambling for cover. The convoy breaks hard. Soldiers spill out, weapons raised, searching for targets. Confusion ripples down the line. Contact. Hawk calls, adjusting, chambering another round with fluid precision. 2 remaining. RPG neutralized. The sergeant's eyes widen. Every doubt, every insult, burns away with each report of that rifle. Hawk isn't just a quiet hunter. He's the reason those trucks are still moving. Another crack. Another body down. The last insurgent vanishes behind stone, crawling, desperate. Hawk tracks the movement, patient. He doesn't chase. He waits. The man peeks. Exhale. Squeeze. The desert swallows him whole. Radio static fills the night, followed by the captain's steady tone. Overwatch, convoy secure. Outstanding work. Hawk doesn't reply. He just watches through the scope as the trucks roll safely past, their engines fading into the distance. Only then does he lower the rifle, sand clinging to his gloves. Behind him, the sergeant stands frozen, mouth half open like he wants to speak, but can't. The contractor mutters something under his breath, something that almost sounds like respect. Hawk says nothing. He just packs the rifle back into its case, clicks it shut, and walks past them. For the first time, neither man dares to mock him. But as Hawk disappears into the dark, the radio crackles again. Not the captain this time. Higher up, Overwatch, new orders. Intel confirms multiple cells along the route. Tonight's ambush was only the beginning. You'll be deployed deeper. The voice pauses, colder now. And Hawk, command wants you alone. The desert feels different once you cross into hostile ground. The air is heavier, pressing in on every breath, every rustle of sand, every whisper wind carries the weight of unseen eyes. The patrol moves cautiously, boots crunching in rhythm against the dirt road carved between jagged ridges. Trucks roll behind them, engines muted under the tension. Everyone knows this is a stretch insurgents love most. Narrow choke points, blind corners, high ground that turns into death ground if you aren't ready. And tonight, Hawk is the one ready. He and his spotter, Corporal Diaz, peel away from the patrol at the base of a slope. No words exchanged. Just a glance, then a nod. They begin their climb, boots sinking in soft sand, rifle slung, gear strapped tight. Every movement measured. Slow enough not to draw attention. Quick enough to be in position before the convoy is exposed. At the ridge line, they belly down, blending into the earth. Hawk unfolds his bipod, the M40 settling into place like an old friend returning home. Beside him, Diaz pulls out the spotting scope. Glass clear, adjustments clicking faintly as he dials focus. Wind! 2 knots in the northwest. Diaz whispers, voice barely audible. Mirage shows steady drift. Target area at 700. Hawk adjusts his scope, reticle sliding into position. His cheek presses into the stock. Every line of his body forming one purpose. Stillness. Radio clicks. Hawk speaks low. Overwatch in position. Eyes on. The captain's voice comes back. Copy, Overwatch. Convoy entering sector. Stay sharp. Below, the patrol stretches forward. The trucks rumble into the pass. Shadows cling to the rocks like waiting predators. The sergeant, still carrying that smirk, still convinced Hawk is nothing more than quiet boy with a toy, keys his mic, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Hope our hunter brought enough bullets. Don't want his little hunting trip spoiled by actual combat. The contractor chuckles, static, carrying a laugh across the net. Diaz glances at Hawk, rolling his eyes. Hawk doesn't respond. His breathing doesn't even shift. All his focus stays in the glass. Check your 6, Diaz, Hawk murmurs. Mirage shifted. Call it. Diaz leans back into the scope, adjusts again. Wind climbing. For knots now. Correction right. 0.3 mils. Hawk nods, his finger brushing the trigger guard. His patience is almost unnerving. Where others fidget, he waits. Where others grow restless, he sharpens. The convoy inches deeper into the kill zone. And then movement. A shimmer at the ridge opposite. Too still to be natural. A shadow shifts where shadows shouldn't. Diaz spots it first. Contact. Ridge east. Range 800. 3 tangos prone, preparing tubes. The sergeant's laugh stops. Static silence. Hawk exhales. His reticle steadies. The world shrinks into crosshairs and target profiles. Priority shooter? Diaz whispers. RPG gunner. Hawk answers. Call wind. Correction right. 0.4 mils. Exhale. Squeeze. The crack of the rifle echoes down the valley. In the scope, the gunner's head snaps back, body folding against stone. His tube clatters harmlessly to the ground. Impact, Diaz whispers. Splash confirmed. The patrol below freezes. Soldier scanning. unsure where the shot came from. Overwatch to command. 1 RPG down. 2 remaining. Copy, Overwatch. Engage at will. The surviving insurgents scatter, scrambling to reposition. 1 sprints toward a higher outcropping, hauling his weapon. Target 2, left flank 900. Diaz calls. Wind stable. Hold 1 mil high. Hawk tracks, adjusts breast steady. Exhale. Squeeze. The second crack rolls like thunder. The insurgent collapses mid-stride, the weapon tumbling from his arms. Diaz grins, adrenaline pumping through his whisper. Second splash. 2 down. The sergeant's voice finally breaks over the radio. Quieter, stripped of mockery. Command, this is Sergeant. Overwatch has it. They've got it locked. Hawk doesn't hear. He doesn't care. There's still 1 left. The last insurgent has crawled into deep shadow, muzzle barely visible through the rocks. Diaz narrows the scope, scanning. There, right side behind cover. Only partial silhouette. Distance 920. Small target. The convoy below has stopped. Soldiers huddle behind armor. Waiting, depending on a man they once laughed at. Hawk steadies. Time slows. Breath. Wind. Heartbeat. The insurgent leans forward just a fraction. Enough. Exhale. Squeeze. The shot slices the silence. Through the glass, the shadow slumps, disappearing into the earth. Diaz exhales like he's been holding it in for hours. 3 for 3. Kill zone clear. Radio bursts to life with the captain's voice. Outstanding work, Overwatch. Convoy moving. Below, the trucks lurch forward. Safe once more. Soldiers glance upward, though they can't see Hawk or Diaz. They don't need to. They know someone's watching. And for the first time, even the sergeant is quiet. As the convoy rolls out of sight, Diaz lowers the spotting scope. Never gets old, he mutters. Hawk doesn't answer. He's already scanning the horizon again, watching for the next shadow, the next glint of steel, the next test. His finger rests easy near the trigger, his body melted into the earth. The desert doesn't forgive mistakes. But tonight, Hawk made none. Behind them, over the radio, the sergeant finally mutters a different kind of words. Not mockery, not laughter, just 4 grudging syllables. Hell of a shot. The convoy had just cleared the choke point when the silence broke. It began with a flash, barely a pinprick of light on the ridgeline, then the scream of incoming fire. An RPG streaked overhead, trailing smoke like a finger of death, before detonating in the sand just shy of the lead vehicle. The ground shook, a burst of orange flame licking skyward. Contact front. Marines shouted, voices cracking with adrenaline. Machine guns roared to life. Gunners swung turrets toward the ridge, laying down suppressive fire. Dust clouds exploded around the rocks where insurgents had set their ambush. AK bursts hammered the valley, sharp and angry, ricocheting against armor plating. The convoy scattered into defensive positions, doors flying open, Marines tumbling out, rifles snapping to shoulders. Chaos had arrived, and it was hungry, but not everyone was scrambling. High above, Hawk was already prone, cheek pressed firm to the stock of his M40. His heartbeat didn't spike. His breathing didn't falter. He was locked in, scanning through a scope while the world below burned with confusion. Diaz, talk to me. Multiple shooters along the ridge. Diaz whispered, his voice tight. Primary threat, RPG gunner. 900 meters. Prone position, readying another shot. Hawk adjusted his turrets, fingers moving with mechanical precision. Clicks filled the air between them. Elevation dialed, windage corrected. Wind. Steady cross, 6 knots east. Hold .4 right. Hawk's exhale rolled slow. He centered the reticle on the man, kneeling with the launcher. The insurgent was fumbling, feeding another rocket, unaware of the crosshairs painting his fate. Target acquired. 900 RPG. Hawk's voice never rose above a whisper. The insurgent shouldered the tube. Hawk squeezed. The rifle cracked, echoing off the canyon walls. A half second later, the gunner's head snapped sideways, his body collapsing in the dirt. The RPG slid harmlessly from his grip. Impact, Diaz confirmed. Threat neutralized. Down below, Marines had frozen mid-fire, their eyes cutting skyward as if trying to locate the invisible guardian. They didn't know exactly where Hawk was. They just knew someone had taken the shot of the day. Overwatch to command. RPG threat eliminated. Convoy intact, Hawk reported. The captain's voice came back hard, clipped with relief. Copy, Overwatch. Beautiful work. Keep eyes open. But the fight wasn't over. The valley thundered with gunfire. More insurgents poured fire into the convoy. Muzzle flashes sparking across the ridges. The Marines responded in kind, tracers streaking through the dusk. The air filled with smoke, sand, and the acrid taste of burned powder. And still, Hawk stayed calm. Next target, he murmured. Diaz swung the scope. Sniper at the tree lean left side. Distance 850. He's lining on our gunners. Hawk adjusted, sliding his reticle. His body didn't move, only the rifle, fine and exact. Hold wind. Steady. No change. Another breath. Another squeeze. Crack. The enemy sniper never fired a shot. Diaz marked it. Splash. Convoy safe. The sergeant's voice came over comms, stripped of all his earlier sarcasm. Command. Overwatch is... Hell, Overwatch is saving our hides out here. Below, Marines began to realize it wasn't luck keeping them alive. It was a quiet hunter on the high ground, a man they had mocked, now cutting down threats with surgical precision. Every shot Hawk fired shifted the balance. Every trigger squeeze was a decision between chaos and control. But the battlefield was far from done. Another plume of smoke erupted, this time closer, from a concealed position near the convoy's flank. A second RPG gunner merged, sprinting from cover, launcher already raised. Diaz hissed, "We've got another 650, closing fast. He's going to get a shot off before." The insurgent stopped, braced, rocket in place. Hawk's reticle was already on him. Exhale. Squeeze. The shot tore through the night. The man dropped before he ever fired. The rocket clattered into the dirt harmless as Marines around the convoy cheered. The sound lost beneath the gunfire. 3 confirmed. Convoy still intact, Diaz reported. Outstanding Overwatch, Command replied. Keep it coming. Through it all, Hawk remained as he always was. Still, calm, unreadable. The battlefield was his element. And while others drowned in chaos, he cut through it like a blade. And yet, he knew better. This was only the opening act. The insurgents weren't retreating. They were repositioning. Flares popped overhead, bathing the valley in harsh red light. Shadows crawled where they shouldn't. Hawk adjusted his scope, narrowing in. There, movement. Figures spreading wider, circling, probing the convoy's flanks. Diaz cursed under his breath. They're not falling back. They're setting for something bigger. Hawk kept scanning, finger resting lightly against the trigger guard. He could feel it in his bones, the shift in tempo, the tightening noose. He whispered, low and certain, as the red light flickered against his face. This was just the beginning. The dust hadn't even settled from the ambush when the mocking sergeant made his move. Down below, Marines were still catching their breath, the convoy grinding into defensive posture. Overwatch reports buzzed across the radio. Everyone knew who had saved them. Everyone except the one man whose pride couldn't accept it. Staff Sergeant Mallory. He stormed up the slope toward Hawk's perch, breathing hard, his jaw clenched tight. His rifle slung low, his eyes burned with something sharper than combat adrenaline, humiliation. You think you're the only man up here who can shoot? Malloy spat, dropping beside Hawk without waiting for an invitation. His words carried more venom than dust. 900 meters. Big deal. Any Marine with steady hands could have made that shot. Diaz stiffened, ready to bite back, but Hawk said nothing. He stayed behind his scope, tracking the ridge, calm as ever. Malloy wasn't done. I'm taking Overwatch, the sergeant growled, sliding his rifle up onto the bipod with all the grace of a bull in a glass shop. Let's see what the quiet hunter really thinks when Marine shows him how it's done. Diaz shot Hawk a look, half disgust, half disbelief. Hawk only gave the smallest shake of his head. No fight, no wasted words. But inside, Hawk knew what was coming. Pride and precision never mixed. Malloy rushed the setup. He barely checked his scope. No wind call, no range estimate. Just raw arrogance pressing against the trigger. Target, left ridge, moving runner, Malloy barked, and before Hawk could warn him, the sergeant fired. The rifle cracked, echoing down the valley. The shot went wide, striking rock with sharp, betraying ping. Dust sprayed with a bullet-chewed stone instead of flesh. And that's when it happened, as if the whole valley had been waiting for that mistake. Enemy rifles snapped toward their position. A dozen muzzles flared. Bullets whined overhead, slicing into dirt, peppering their cover. Position compromised. Diaz hissed, yanking his spotting scope down. They've got eyes on us now. Malloy cursed, ducking low, but the damage was done. His sloppy marksmanship had lit a beacon for the enemy. The Marines below shouted in confusion. Forced back into cover as fire intensified. The convoy's thin bubble of safety cracked under the weight of incoming rounds. And through it all, Hawk moved, not in anger, not in panic, but with the quiet certainty of a man who had been here before. He slid Malloy's rifle aside with a single deliberate push. His own M40 came up, stock snug against his cheek. Diaz. Spot. Diaz nodded instantly, relief flooding his voice. Copy. Left ridge. 3 shooters, 650 to 700. Coordinated fire. Wind. Steady, 2 knots. Left to right. Hawk adjusted. Fingers crisp on the turret. He exhaled, steady and slow, tuning out Malloy's heavy breathing beside him. The reticle found its mark. Crack. First insurgent dropped. Shift. Crack. Second fell back against stone, rifle clattering loose. Hawk dialed again, barely lifting his head. Third man popped up to fire, muzzle flash giving him away. Crack. Silence. 3 bodies slumped across the ridge. The enemy's sudden blind spot gave the convoy breathing room. Marines rallied, weapons roaring again with new confidence. Below, voices erupted over comms. Overwatch, that's a clean sweep. Keep it coming. Whoever's pulling that trigger, don't stop. Malloy sat there, silent. The valley didn't care about his rank or his ego. It cared about results, and right now, the quiet hunter was the only one delivering. Hawk didn't gloat, didn't even look his way. He stayed in his lane, scanning through his scope, calling his next target. Sniper, Nortreline. Distance 950. Elevated. Diaz tracked him, spotting scope gleaming in the light. Confirmed. He's hunting us. Malloy's face drained. He reached for his rifle, desperate to regain control. But Hawk spoke, quiet and firm, for the first time in the sergeant's presence. Not this time, Sergeant. Stay down. It wasn't a request. Malloy froze. Words caught in his throat. Something in Hawk's tone, calm, unshakable, absolute, cut sharper than rank. Hawk settled back in. Adjusted. Breathed. The enemy sniper revealed himself with a fraction of movement. A flash of glass. A tilted barrel. Crack. The shot reached him before he knew he'd been found. His rifle tumbled from the tree-lean, lifeless hands unable to hold it. Diaz whispered the confirmation. Target down. No further eyes on us. The radio filled with cheers. Marines below who had just watched death aimed at him snuffed out by a single, unseen bullet. Malloy lowered his head. His hands trembled against his own rifle, shame weighing heavier than the enemy's fire. The mocking sergeant who once called Hawk quiet boy now had no voice at all. And Hawk, he simply cycled the bolt, chambering his next round. His face unreadable, his breathing steady. To him, this wasn't vindication. It was duty, but to everyone else watching, the Marines below, Diaz at his side, and even Malloy crouched in silence, the tables had shifted. The man they mocked, the hunter they underestimated, was no longer just another Marine. He was the reason they were still alive. And the valley, still echoing with gunfire, was only beginning to understand what kind of predator had just stepped into its shadows. The battlefield doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. For 3 days, Hawk and Diaz lay in the hills, watching the same stretch of valley, a supply route winding like a brown scar across the desert floor. No ambush, no movement, just heat waves rising from the earth and silence pressing against their ears. The mission was simple, too simple. Provide overwatch until command cleared the route. Yet for Hawk, the hardest part wasn't the shooting. It was the waiting. Most men went crazy with nothing but dust, stillness, and the ticking clock. Hawk seemed to sink deeper into it. Like patience was oxygen, and he could hold his breath longer than anyone else. Diaz shifted beside him, trying not to fidget. 3 days, brother. Nothing. You even alive in there? Hawk's cheek stayed welded to the stock of his rifle. His voice was a low current. Alive. Always. It wasn't bravado. It was fact. Because Hawk knew what few understood. Sniping wasn't about the trigger. It was about patience. 99% waiting. 1% action. The sun bled down. Shadows stretched long. Through his spotting scope, Diaz muttered, I don't know how you do it, man. My eyes feel like sandpaper. Hawk blinked once. Don't look harder. Look longer. Hours passed. The world shrank to a circle of glass. Hawks in the sky wheeled. Heat shimmered on the rocks. The valley kept its secrets close. And then, movement. A flicker near the tree line, far to the east. Too smooth for wind, too sharp for nature. Hawk's reticle froze there, patient, unblinking. Diaz caught a moment later. Contact. Possible spotter. 800. Hawk didn't fire. Not yet. His finger lay near the trigger, resting like it was carved in stone. His breathing slowed. This is where the science began. Did you know? Snipers train to lower their heart rate before a shot. Some practice until they can fire between heartbeats, so the rise and fall of their chest never shift the reticle, not even by a hair. Hawk was one of them. His pulse dropped, steady as a drumbeat in a cavern. He waited, tracking that shadow at the tree line, not rushing the moment. Seconds stretched into eternities. The enemy leaned, shifted, revealed just enough. Hawk fired between beats. Crack. The figure collapsed instantly, glass flashing as a scope hit the dirt. Diaz whistled low. That was not luck. But Hawk had already moved, adjusting, watching for the follow-up. Because where there's a spotter, there's a shooter. The second figure revealed itself a heartbeat later. A rifle muzzle, long and dark, creeping into the light. Enemy sniper. Patient, skilled, until Hawk forced his hand. Sniper. North tree line. 900 even. Diaz whispered, voice tense. Hawk exhaled. The enemy settled in, searching for the flash that had just killed his partner. For Hawk, it was a duel of ghosts, each waiting for the other to blink. The seconds stretched. The valley seemed to hold its breath. Diaz dared not move. And then Hawk did something Malloy could never understand. Something even Diaz barely believed. He shifted his reticle half an inch. Off target. Hawk, you're... Wait. The enemy sniper leaned, greedy for a target. He expected Hawk to be impatient, to rush a second shot. Instead, Hawk created space, a deliberate void. And in that silence, the enemy exposed himself. Crack. Hawk's bullet found him mid-breath. 1 second he was alive, scanning, hunting. The next, his scope lay abandoned in the dirt. Diaz finally exhaled. A shaky laugh caught in his throat. Jesus, brother, you let him walk into it. Hawk didn't smile. His eyes stayed on the ridge, sweeping for shadows. Patience kills. Down in the valley, the convoy rolled safe again, unaware of the duel that had just decided their fate. To them, the hills were just hills. To Hawk, they were chessboards, each move measured, each piece invisible until it was gone. As the night deepened, Diaz finally broke the silence. You ever get tired of this? Sitting in the dirt, waiting for ghosts. Hawk pulled back on the scope, stretching just enough to ease his stiff muscles. His face stayed unreadable, voice low. I don't wait for ghosts. I wait for mistakes. And that was the truth. For Hawk, Patience wasn't suffering. It was a weapon. Every still second sharpened his edge, until the enemy's human impulse to move, to reveal, to rush became their downfall. By dawn, the operation was over. No convoy losses. No ambushes sprung. 2 enemy sharpshooters who never made a home, and 1 Marine sniper whose legend quietly grew in the silence he carried. Because sometimes the most dangerous sound on the battlefield is the one that never comes. The hills were restless. Convoys had moved for weeks under Hawk's watch, each one untouched, each ambush strangled before it could breathe. The insurgent network was bleeding, cut at the edges. But tonight was different. Diaz spotted it first. Through the haze, across a valley wide enough to swallow cities, a convoy of fighters moved with unusual discipline. No wild firing, no careless chatter. At the center, a figure in dark robes, flanked by guards. Diaz's voice was a low growl. That's him, the commander, the one pulling all the strings. Hawk adjusted his rifle. The long barrel settled on its bipod. Through the glass, the world narrowed. Heat shimmer danced across the valley. Mirage turned shadows into liquid ghosts. The distance was staggering. Beyond 900, closer to 1,200 meters. For most Marines, the shot was theory, a problem for the manuals. Diaz exhaled hard. Brother, doctrine says we don't take this. Too far. Mirage is brutal. Winds gusting in 3 layers. You miss, they scatter. You hit dirt, we're exposed. Hawk didn't answer. His finger rested near the trigger, not touching, not rushing. His chest rose once, slow as a tide. He began the math in silence. Distance, elevation, humidity, wind shear. He could feel it more than calculated, each variable absorbed through years of quiet repetition. Diaz leaned harder into the spotting scope, frustration growing. I'm telling you, man, this isn't it. This is suicide. Hawk's voice was steady, almost weightless. He won't get another valley. The insurgent commander was speaking now, gesturing to lieutenants, his words carried by conviction alone. Somewhere below, Marines held their breath, waiting, unaware of the hunter above them. Diaz cursed under his breath. Goddamn quiet boy, you're really doing it. Hawk slowed his breathing. The world fell away until only the crosshairs remained. Mirage swam, wind tugged, but his mind threaded the chaos into stillness. He waited for his heart to settle. Did you know? At extreme range, snipers train to fire between heartbeats. The body itself becomes part of the weapon. A single pulse can throw the barrel just enough to miss by inches. At 1,000 yards, that means missing by feet. Hawk exhaled. The reticle steadied. His pulse slowed. He pressed the trigger. Crack! The report rolled across the hills, swallowed by distance. A heartbeat later, dust lifted near the commander's feet. Guards flinched, confused, before the second echo reached them. And then silence. The commander stiffened, arms out as though reaching for something unseen. A crimson bloom spread across his chest. He staggered once, then folded into the dirt. Chaos detonated. Fighters screamed, running in every direction, firing wildly at hills that gave no answer. Vehicles roared to life, kicking up clouds of dust. Orders collapsed into panic. Diaz froze behind the scope, jaw slack. He cut himself off, voice shaking. Brother, that was 1,200. At least. Through mirage, through wind. Hawk already worked the bolt, scanning, calm as ever. Confirm. Target neutralized. Diaz barked out a half-laugh, half-breathless curse. Neutralized? You dropped the damn linchpin of this whole network. You just saved every convoy south of here. Below, Marines began to cheer, though they didn't know who had fired. They only knew the enemy commander was gone. The ambush machine shattered with a single bullet. But up on the ridge, Hawk stayed silent. No smile, no swagger. Just a steady ice sweeping the valley for what might come next. Diaz leaned back, shaking his head in disbelief. You know what this means, don't you? They'll put your name in every briefing from here to D.C. Hawk's cheek lifted from the stock, just long enough to glance at his spotter. His expression was unreadable. Names don't stop bullets. Diaz let out a low chuckle, though it was uneasy. Quiet Hunter. Huh? I think the whole valley just heard you. The words lingered, caught between admiration and awe, because Hawk's legend had been whispered until now, hidden in the silence of waiting, in shadows and patience. Tonight it had spoken, through fire and distance, through the impossible shot that no one else would have taken. As the insurgents scattered, command relayed the kill over comms. A confirmed high-value target eliminated. The network in disarray. The supply route safe. Marines on the ground lifted their eyes toward the ridges, knowing somewhere up there was a ghost who had just saved them. And though they couldn't see him, though they didn't know his name, one truth spread through the ranks like wildfire. The Quiet Hunter was real, and the battlefield would never look the same again. But Hawk, lying prone in the dust, only blinked once, sliding another round into the chamber. For him, there was no record, no glory, only the next shot. The valley still breathed. The war was not over, and patience would be tested again. The night was cooling fast. Smoke drifted low across the valley, fading into the dark. The insurgents had scattered hours ago, their network shattered by one impossible shot. Now the ridgeline lay quiet again, but inside the platoon, silence meant something different. For weeks, Hawk had carried the weight of every sneer, every whispered joke, the sergeant's mocking voice, the contractor's dismissive laugh, even the sideways glances from men who thought a boy with no noise in him had no place in their war. But after tonight, that weight was gone. The unit moved back into their makeshift command post, weary but alive. Gear clattered onto tables. Helmets rolled across bunks, the low hum of radios filling the gaps. It was ordinary noise, except for the absence of one voice. The sergeant. He sat apart from the others, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it might answer questions he had no courage to ask. His swagger was gone, stripped by the truth that had unfolded on the ridge. He had seen it through his own eyes. While Marines scrambled for cover, while chaos ripped the air apart, Hawk had stayed still. Calm, measured. One shot, one man, one valley shifted forever. The sergeant lifted his head at last. His eyes went to Hawk, who sat in the corner quietly cleaning his rifle, every motion slow and practiced. No celebration, no smile, just a ritual of care for the tool that kept men breathing. The sergeant swallowed. His words came low, heavy with the taste of shame. That was a hell of a shot. No one laughed. No one added to it. The barracks stayed quiet, waiting for Hawk to respond. But Hawk only nodded once, as if he'd been told a weather report. His hands never stopped working the cloth over steel. The silence stretched until even the sergeant couldn't hold it. He pushed his feet, jaw tight, and walked out into the night. It was Diaz who broke the tension. Leaning against the wall, spotting scope slung over his shoulder, he gave a low whistle. Never thought I'd see the day that man ran out of words. The Marines chuckled softly, but it wasn't mockery anymore. It was something closer to reverence. The contractor, always so sure, always so smug, stood by the window, arms crossed. He had been the loudest voice of doubt, the one who said Marines were too young, too green, too untested to matter. Now his head shook slowly, disbelief written across his face. He muttered, almost to himself. 1200 to Mirage, damn near physics, said no. His eyes tracked Hawk with something he hadn't shown before. Respect. The kind you can't buy, can't fake. The kind earned only in fire. For the platoon, it clicked all at once. Hawk hadn't been quiet because he was unsure. He hadn't avoided words because he lacked them. He had been quiet because he didn't need them. While others filled air with boasts, Hawk filled silence with patience. While others measured worth in stories, Hawk measured it in a single steady breath behind the trigger. One by one, Marines glanced at him differently now. Not the strange boy, not the ghost in the corner, but the one whose stillness had saved them all. Diaz caught the shift and smiled faintly. Told you boys, sometimes the quiet ones are just waiting. No one argued. Outside, the sergeant lingered by the vehicles, his pride bleeding into the dirt. He replayed every insult, every careless jab he'd thrown at the kid who never fought back with words. And now, that same kid had carried the platoon farther than his own orders ever had. He wanted to apologize, wanted to put the weight of his failure into something Hawk could hear. But what words could survive against silence that powerful? Back inside, Hawk finished cleaning the rifle, snapped it shut, and rested it across his knees. His eyes lifted just once, sweeping the room, and then dropped again. He didn't need their applause. He didn't need their voices. He had the only confirmation that mattered. Every man here was alive. The platoon settled into a rhythm, but it was quieter than before, not uncomfortable, reverent. They had learned something the hard way, the only way soldiers truly learn. And though Hawk never spoke it, the lesson lived in every man's chest. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strength waiting for its moment. The sergeant would never mock him again. The contractor would never dismiss a Marine's quiet presence. And the platoon would never forget the day respect replaced ridicule. Hawk had earned it, not with words, not with boasts, but with fire and stillness, with patience and precision, with silence. The night had fallen softly over the base, the desert wind carrying dust like whispered memories. The long days of tension, ambushes, and precision had faded into routine. Convoys moved safely again, the valley no longer threatened by unseen eyes. Hawk sat alone at a makeshift desk, a dim lamp casting light over the notebook in front of him. His rifle rested nearby, its polished steel reflecting the lamp like a sentinel. He picked up a pen and began to write, not for rank, not for medals, not for anyone who would read it, but for home. "Dear Mom," he started, the ink flowing steady and deliberate, mirroring his mind. "I won't tell you about the shot that saved a convoy or the commander who never saw me. You wouldn't understand the numbers, the wind calls, the heartbeat between shots. What matters is something you've always known. Duty doesn't wait for applause, and honor doesn't need a voice claim it." He paused, looking out the window at the desert hills, shadowed now in moonlight. Memories of every quiet moment behind the scope filled his mind, the waiting, the calculations, the patience that had turned the tide. He remembered the faces of his team, each Marine alive because of silence and precision, because of one man who didn't need to boast. He wrote on, "I've learned that brotherhood is louder than any cheer, that patience can kill, but it can also protect, and that the quietest people often carry the heaviest responsibility. I've seen what fear looks like in a man's eyes and what courage can feel like in the stillness between breaths." Every word carried weight, not because he wanted them recorded in history, but because he understood the truth behind them. Hawk had never sought recognition. Recognition had sought him, and the valley, the ridges, the convoys, they would carry a story in silence, whispering from one Marine to another. The platoon had begun to speak of him differently, not as the strange boy who kept to the shadows, not as the quiet one who never boasted. They called him Hawk now, the quiet hunter, the Marine who carried patience like a weapon. Mallory, the once mocking sergeant, had shifted in his understanding. Respect had replaced ridicule. He would never say it aloud, but every glance now carried acknowledgement. The contractor who had scoffed at their abilities simply shook his head, still unable to reconcile the calm precision he'd witnessed. And the platoon, finally understanding what it meant to wait, to observe, to calculate. Their whispers carried Hawk's legend without him ever speaking a word. Hawk's pen moved steadily across the page. He wrote about the moments that no one would see, the hours of waiting, the scent of dust in the wind, the slight rise and fall of a pulse at the edge of death. He wrote about Diaz, who had been there through every silent calculation, his eyes sharp, his confidence unwavering. He wrote about every Marine he'd protected, every convoy that reached its destination, every insurgent who had been stopped without unnecessary loss of life. "Mom," he wrote, "I've learned that glory is fleeting, but duty lasts, that the silence of the desert teaches more than any shout, and that courage, real courage, isn't loud. It waits, it calculates, it acts when the moment is right, and it protects the lives of those around you without asking for thanks." The lamp flickered as a gentle wind passed through the open window, carrying the desert's coolness across the page. Hawk leaned back, reading over what he had written. He didn't sign it with a flourish or rank. He just let it sit there, the words a mirror to the truth he lived every day. Outside, the barracks were quiet. Marines slept, unaware of the moments of silence and calculation that had kept them alive. But they whisper Hawk's name, not in gossip, not in exaggeration, but in respect. Quiet Hunter. Hawk. Words that carried weight beyond any metal. Stories that would echo through walls and mess halls. Lessons in patience, precision, and silent bravery. He closed a notebook, tucking it into an envelope. It wasn't about recognition. It wasn't about telling anyone how many lives were spared or how many threats had been neutralized. It was about recording the truth for himself, about capturing the quiet moments that defined a lifetime of service. Hawk rose from the desk, stretching the stiffness from hours of sitting still. His rifle was slung across his back, clean and ready. Outside, the wind stirred again, whispering across the desert ridges, carrying the ghosts of battles past and the echoes of shots fired in patience. He walked toward the door, pausing to glance back at the lamplit room. Shadows danced across the walls, shadows of moments lived in silence. He stepped out into the night, each footfall deliberate, measured, unseen. In the mess hall, a young Marine glanced up as he passed, recognition flickering in his eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The quiet hunter had passed, and the story was already alive in his mind. The sergeant, still on the porch, nodded once. Small, almost imperceptible, but it was acknowledgement enough. Hawk had changed their understanding of courage, their understanding of duty, their understanding of what it meant to be a Marine. Diaz fell in step beside him. "You ever tell anyone?" he asked quietly, not needing to. Hawk shook his head, eyes forward. Some stories are better left whispered. They walked together under the desert sky, the moon casting long shadows across the ground. Their footsteps were silent, but their presence spoke louder than any words ever could. The quiet hunter had not only survived the battles of the valley, but had transformed the soldiers around him, earning a legacy of respect, patience, and unwavering duty. Hawk finally allowed himself a moment to reflect, not on medals, not on fame, but on the lives preserved by his actions, on the trust of his brothers in arms, on the value of patience and calculation over noise and impulse, on the satisfaction of knowing that when the moment came, he had been ready. And though the story of the shot that shattered an insurgent network would ripple through the military, Hawk's own satisfaction was far simpler. The lives he saved, the team he protected, and the honor maintained through every silent calculation. He stopped on the ridge one last time, looking down at the valley that had been his domain for weeks. The wind rustled the dry grasses, whispering to the dust like an echo of his own patience. He lowered his eyes to the rifle in his hands. The rifle had carried him, but he had carried it, too, together. They had protected a world that had underestimated them both. Diaz gave a small smile, watching him. "Quiet hunter, huh? You've earned it." Hawk only nodded, eyes softening for the first time. Not pride, not arrogance, only understanding. Duty fulfilled, brotherhood honored, patience rewarded. And so the legend of the quiet hunter lived on, not in loud tales, not in boastful stories, but in whispered respect in the barracks, in the minds of Marines who had seen his calm save lives, in letters home that carried truth instead of glory. The battlefield would remember him. The Marines would remember him. And somewhere in the quiet spaces of the world, the hunter will remember himself, not for the shots fired or enemies felled, but for the patience that had made it all possible. Hawk lifted his pen once more, writing the final line in his letter. Brotherhood, duty, patience. That is enough. That is what matters. He folded the letter carefully, sealing it, and placed it in the envelope. No fanfare, no announcement, just the quiet satisfaction of a Marine who had done what needed to be done. And for the first time in weeks, Hawk allowed himself to breathe freely. The storm had passed. Respect had replaced ridicule. Duty had been honored. And the quiet hunter had truly become a legend. As the desert wind carried away the last echoes of the battle, Hawk stepped back from the light, letting the shadows embrace him. Somewhere in the barracks, in the convoys, and in the minds of those he protected, the story of the quiet hunter would never fade. Because some heroes don't shout. Some heroes don't demand attention. Some heroes act, and in their silence, they leave a legacy that speaks louder than any battle cry ever could. Hawk's story had been written, not in medals, not in recognition, not in noise, but in honor, patience, and unwavering duty. The quiet hunter had changed the tide, and he had done it without ever needing to speak.